All right.
Yeah.
I'm looking at 8 o'clock, so why don't I bring this Downtown Development Authority virtual meeting on Wednesday, June 10th, 2021 at 8 a.m. to order. Amanda, would you like to take roll call?
Yes, please. Mr. Avila? Mayor Bliss? And again, I'm sorry, if you could just state your name and where you're participating from remotely this morning. I think this might be the last time we have to do this for us.
Yes, hopefully we'll be back together next time. So this is Russell Bliss, and I'm here in the city of Charlotte.
Ms. Dunn?
I am present and I'm participating remotely from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Great. Mr. Eddy? Mr. McNeely?
Present from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Great. Ms. Schottky?
Good morning, Jen Schottky, attending remotely from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Ms. Seeger?
Diana Seeger from Grand Rapids, attending remotely.
Mr. Talon?
Jim Talon, participating remotely from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
And Mr. Wynn?
Rick Wynn, participating remotely from Grand Rapids.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. First order of business, we have the approval of the meeting minutes for May 12th. Are there any comments or corrections that anyone would like to bring forward?
I move approval. This is KM.
Thank you, KM.
Neely supports.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Anybody would like to abstain or vote no for this motion? Hearing none, the meeting minutes are approved. Next are the May 2021 financials. Ms. Chapman, are you on? I see you're on.
I am. Good morning, everyone. Here are your financial statements through the end of May. The authority looks to be in good shape. Even with the pandemic, things are still looking okay. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them now, do a little research if need be, and get back to you. Otherwise, just looking for approval on the list of expenditures for the last month.
Any questions for Tricia?
Move adoption, Mr. Chairman.
This is Jen, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to accept the financials and a second. Any other comments or questions? Is there anyone on the board that would like to vote no or abstain from this motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
And if I could just interrupt real quickly, I know that I see Mr. Avila and Mr. Eddy have joined us. If they'd like to announce that they're participating with us, where they're from this morning.
Sure, I'll start. Luis Avila, participating from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Jermel Eddy, also participating from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Great. Next is website design services. I don't know, Tim, if you want to set this up for us.
Yeah, I'll set this up and then I'll invite Sam Suarez from our team to come on. She's going to kind of walk through a quick presentation, but we released an RFP a couple of months ago for a little bit of a website or overhaul, I should say, and really focused on the visitor experience. And so we have a recommendation for a consultant to work on that. So Sam, if you want to step up and kind of walk through the specifics, that would be great.
Hi, Tim. Good morning, everyone. As Tim said, I'm here to walk you through our new website design and development agenda item for you guys this morning. Amanda, you can go to the next slide. So just as a reminder, this is our current website's homepage. Basically, we feel that our current website is trying to do too many things at once. It's trying to be Downtown Grand Rapids Inc., the organization, and Downtown Grand Rapids, the place. So it's serving as both a website that talks about all our projects, but also a visitor's guide. And we feel like it does neither very effectively because there's just so much going on that maybe a board member or either a visitor doesn't really know where to start. And anecdotally, I've heard that both from our staff members and people, visitors that have asked I manage our info@downtowngr.org mailbox, and a lot of people just like ask for simple things that are found on our website. Clearly, there's a navigation issue. Amanda, you can go to the next slide. So here is kind of how it serves as downtown Grand Rapids, the place, like a visitor's guide. On the right, you'll see that there's kind of a search box that kind of lists in a directory type of fashion everything that can be found downtown, and we also have an interactive map. So it's a business directory, it shows our parking, transportation options, downtown ambassadors, events. That's the kind of stuff that a visitor would look for, in short. Amanda, next slide. And in terms of downtown Grand Rapids, I think the organization, that's where it talks about our programs, projects, our board meetings, press releases, grants, and that sort of thing. If you look on the left there, you can see a list of all the programs and projects that are on the website. And that's my picture in the outdoor refreshment area one. Next slide. So one of the reasons we thought that it was a good time to sort of separate downtown Grand Rapids, the place, from the organization through a new website is because, as you all know, we have a new wayfinding system in the works that's going to be implemented in the next couple of months. And that new wayfinding system is kind of branded around the Grand River. That's why it's all blue with that water element there. And that'll be everything from gateways, welcome signs, to directional signage, pedestrian kiosks, and parking. And we thought that this is a great opportunity to make that new website, the Downtown Grand Rapids, the place website, if you will, match the branding of this new wayfinding system. And that we keep the old organizational website to DGRI's old branding. And the pedestrian kiosks and parking kiosks, like they could kind of like interact with the new website, the visitor's website, in a kind of seamless visitor experience kind of way. So maybe there's a QR code in some of these signages that it like directs you to our website and gets you exactly what you're looking for, depending on the kiosk you're interacting with that you stumble upon downtown. Amanda, next slide, please. So after we sent out the RFQ in April of 2021, we received about 9 submissions, and we recommend Well Design to you guys today because they're very familiar with downtown, and we actually worked with them already to make the Downtown Neighbor Network website, which I actually proposed to you guys a few months ago as well. So this is the homepage of the current Downtown Neighbor Network website. We had a great experience working with them. And the overall budget for this would be not to exceed $32,000. And we already anticipated this project during the financial year 2022 budget. So it's part of that, just to make that clear. And we had a great experience with them, basically pulling all the Live Downtown information from the old website, because that was another thing that was cluttering it and also hard to navigate around. And this standalone downtown resident website has been well received so far. Next slide, sorry. That's all, thank you. If there's any questions, please let me know.
All right, thanks, Sam. Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Chair, this is Greg. I have a couple of questions, just trying to understand how this would be marketed or fit in. Let me preface it by saying the general agreement with the goal here and the project. But I know Experience GR, for instance, has a website that has previously been sort of pushed as the first stop for a visitor to the city. Wondering how it will play with that, or if they're changing focus on that site. Again, totally get the point of this project and the way it'll interface, particularly with the new wayfinding, makes total sense. But just wondering about sort of mixed messages as to where a visitor should go, or if these are competing platforms in any way again, trying to avoid, as you'll note, my theme of duplication. So.
Sure, yeah, that's a really good question. So Experience Grand Rapids. Oh, I'm supposed to answer that, right? I wasn't sure if someone else gonna. Okay, I'll answer it. So the thing with Experience Grand Rapids is it kind of covers the greater Grand Rapids area. It even includes like a bit of East Grand Rapids and like Wyoming, Kentwood stuff, and basically just outside of downtown. And this website will be hyper local to the downtown experience and will like curate everything for a downtown visitor only specifically.
Maybe just to add to that, Member McNeil, I think we see opportunity to collaborate with Experience GR on this and have reached out to them to that effect. So we certainly don't intend to duplicate anything and want to make sure that this is additive to the visitor experience and the content that they're able to find when they want to come to downtown. So that is certainly part of how we would be moving forward on this.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Chairman, this is Jim.
Yes, Jim.
Kind of want to piggyback on Greg's question there and also express some concern about collaborating and not duplicating and having those conversations in advance of this work. I know that it's been said that there have been some conversations with Experience Grand Rapids. I don't know how in-depth those have been, but I think, I mean, they're trying to bring people downtown to the convention center. They have a huge focus on downtown, and it seems like there is potential for overlap. There's also potential for great collaboration. They are a month or two away from launching a new website, so it's a little bit unfortunate that we haven't been having those conversations to be able to coordinate this, but I really want to urge staff to have some significant conversations with them prior to launching this or at the beginning of launching it to make sure that we are integrating it with what they're doing.
Thanks, Jim. I mean, I think there's still time certainly to collaborate since we haven't engaged this company yet. Also, I'm not sure that I agree that duplication is a bad thing. I think when people are inquiring on any website, they don't necessarily want to be directed to another website. So I think having more websites out there that advocate and advertise for whether it's the county or downtown or whatever, I think could be a positive thing.
If I could just follow up, Chairman, I totally understand that. The other piece is that there are significant back end things that require a fair amount of staff time and resources that there can be different front ends that access that back end. But my concern is not duplicating that back end, that data that's out there that really doesn't need to be entered 2 or 3 times in different locations. If it's coordinated, it can be done in one place more efficiently, more effectively, and then looking at that data from different websites. Those conversations should be upfront.
Well, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can still collaborate with Experience Grand Rapids, correct?
Sorry.
And or the chamber, and or I mean there are a few other websites that are really doing similar things. So
yes, it's not too late. We've just begun we're still on like the drawing board and the whole thing. So there's certainly a lot of time to still collaborate with the chamber and Experience GR. And to sort of answer your question, Greg, about duplicating data, you're completely right. And that's why that interactive map feature on our current website is kind of pretty outdated, because the way it's set up is that I have to manually input every new business and every time someone moves around or closes or changes business hours. And that's one of the solutions we're hoping to work on with Well Design to figure out a way where it's not so tedious and we're not duplicating data. And we don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but we've seen some technology out there that kind of could solve that for us. And one of that could be like integrating with Google Cards and Google My Business, because every business has a Google business account, whether or not they manage it, and it kind of gets auto-populated by the users of the world if they themselves don't update it. And it's the most accurate we've seen, like compared to Facebook business profiles and the like.
Mayor, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So just a couple couple thoughts. I think some of that feedback is really good. I'm eager to see the updated Experience Grand Rapids website as well. But I do, especially this past year, we've had a lot of conversations about how do we let people know about events that are happening. And so I think there's a real opportunity to really make that more robust. I do think there's a difference with Experience Grand Rapids. I find that they are more regionally focused and focused, in bringing tourists in. But there's a lot of people who are right here in Grand Rapids and Kent County, and they're looking for ideas as well. So I really like the idea of having it both. I'm with you, Chair. I think duplication isn't always bad. The only thing I would add is, websites are very passive. And people need to go there to look for them. And I think one thing that we're missing is being more proactive in getting the word out about what is happening over the next week and the next month, and having a more regular, getting it out beyond our website, beyond our social media, into other platforms and with the media to let people know what's happening. So I wonder if that could also be considered as you start to work with Well Design.
Sam, you're on mute.
Yeah, Sam, you want to jump in on that?
Oh, I apologize. Sorry. I'm live streaming this meeting as I'm presenting, so it's a bit tricky. Absolutely, I think that's a great idea, and we can certainly include that in our process with Well Design to make sure like we collaborate with local media a bit more. And I think the wayfinding is a really good way as well to kind of be more proactive, as you say, since even if like you're trapped downtown and haven't looked at our website yet, the new wayfinding system, which includes the visitor kiosks that will kind of like interact / talk to our website in a way where even if you don't know quite what you're looking for, you'll be able to find something to do downtown. I hope that answers your question.
Member McNeely, you have another question or comment?
I do, but in fairness, I think I saw it. Member Shotke's hand has been up for a
I'm
while.
so sorry. I did not see it. Jill, you want to make a comment?
Sure, and that's okay, no problem. But so just two quick comments. First, overall support. I think that when thinking about websites, it's often like thinking about furniture or fixed assets. They depreciate over time. There's just a need to refresh every couple of years. So overall support. But just a question about SEO. When I do a quick Google of Grand Rapids, Michigan, or what to do in Grand Rapids, DGRI does not come up yet on the first page of Google. So is that a piece of what's built into this proposal?
Absolutely, SEO is a huge priority. I think one of the reasons in terms of SEO search words that we don't pop up right away for visitors is because of the information that's so currently hard to find on our website right now, which is trying to do too much at once. I know with other search words, our website does come up first, but yeah, it's an issue that there's a good amount of traffic in our website in general, but people, based on our Google Analytics, you can sort of see their experience getting confused depending on how they entered the website and what they're looking for.
Thank you, Sam.
So I'll come back to you, Greg, too, but Member Avila, do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering if we could speak a little more to the accessibility aspect of the website. I think that this is a great opportunity to set ourselves apart from other websites, right? From other information that's being shared out there about events in Grand Rapids and what's going on downtown. But I want to make sure that we're making it accessible to all the communities that are trying to access this. And I'm just curious in terms of other languages, in terms of people with visual disabilities, what are we doing in that respect to make sure that we're accessible?
That's a great question. So one of the reasons we wanted to choose Well Design out of everyone is because in their proposal, they included a lot of those considerations that are really important to us at DGRI. And they actually have really, really good Spanish translation services. And they're going to find a way to make it so that for static pages, it's always the same content, but that for content that might change a lot, that those pages are customizable. So obviously some content will change a lot, like, I can't think of example, maybe a business directory, but a parking page would be pretty static. So that would be pretty easy to solve in terms of translation. And they also have a really good suggestion or proposal when it comes to those who are visually impaired as well. So those are things we are considering, those two at least right now. But if there's others we're not thinking of, please let us know.
Yeah, I don't have anything specific in mind in terms of solutions, but I just think, we are the client here, and I would encourage us to make this a priority, right, and to push back. And even if there are areas that are a little challenging, I think we should make it a priority.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Okay, Greg, we're back to you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment following up on the mayor's notion that sort of planted this seed that I think is germane to the conversation, but not the motion that's being requested. And that is, as we think about this website, there may be a role for some sort of sub-budget that involves paid advertising to promote that. So it's not just SEO, optimized, but that there's actual some push behind it. I say that without awareness of what the current Google AdWords are, what their rates are. But anyways, just something to throw out there in the mix if the team hasn't considered it.
Anybody else? Great, robust discussion. I'm impressed how many people are so interested in websites and know more information than I do about them. So, if there are no other questions, I would need a motion to approve this expenditure.
So moved, Mr. Chair. I'll support.
Okay, so Luis has made the motion and Greg supports. Any other comments or questions? Is there anyone on the board that would like to vote no or abstain from this motion? All right, hearing none, motion carries. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Next is Lion Square Permitting Services, Mr. Miller.
We have, we're actually on item 5 would be the public restroom.
Okay, I have a
Are you looking at a draft? Are you looking at the old agenda?
Yes.
We shuffled a couple items. So item 5 is the restroom.
All right. I can adapt quickly. So who's carrying this?
This would be Mr. Elledge.
Okay. Melvin?
That's me. I was really nervous I was going to have to talk about Lion Square for a minute.
Well, you can if you'd like to.
Sure.
All
It's
right.
great. Doing a great job. Good morning, everybody. I'm here to talk about engineering services for another public restroom. So as you all likely recall, our organization has been highly involved in the advocacy and development of additional public restrooms throughout downtown. These efforts kind of began in earnest about 3 years ago, the result of which is the new Portland Lieu facility that has landed on Weston and Division. That facility now has been in operation for over a year and has been extremely well received by the community and really provided us and our team with some really valuable insights into how to best maintain and operate a 24/7 public restroom. As great as that restroom is, one restroom isn't enough to address the needs that exist in our downtown. So I'm here today seeking approval to restart the process and begin a search for a second location to land another Portland Lieu facility in the district. So the request is for $15,300 to hire Moore and Bruchnik, who did the work on the original Lieu, to assist us in consulting on possible locations and then eventually provide engineering services on the final chosen location. I should also mention that if we go forward with this, I will be back to ask for a lot more money to purchase and construct a Lieu and its location. So I'll keep it short and sweet, and I'll open it up to questions.
Mr. Chair, McNeely again, just a quick question. Since Mr. Eldridge mentioned the additional costs, and I know costs are variable in this environment, but what do you think the total project cost of once we have installed a second unit will run? And is that anticipated in the budget?
So it depends a little bit on the location that's ultimately chosen and the work that needs to go into the site itself to prepare it for the Portland Lieu facility. I checked in with Madden Fabrication, who is the designer and fabricator of the facility, and their prices haven't changed terribly much since we ordered a Lieu. I mean, they've gone up a little bit, but not considerably. So I think it's a little hard to say like what exactly the cost will be. It depends, again, like I said, on the site that's chosen. We do have Portland Lieu and the construction costs budgeted for the next upcoming fiscal year, FY22, 23, whatever fiscal year we're going to be in. 22, I forget what year it is. Thanks, COVID. So we do have those costs budgeted for the next budget cycle.
Just a question, Melvin, is there anything significant that we've learned from the first installation that we need to keep in mind or change or not?
I think one of the two big takeaways that I have are the amount of service that we have given the Lieu has been adequate. I think there was some concerns that cleaning it 3+ times a day may not be enough, but I think that our team, the ambassadors, have done an excellent job at keeping it clean and keeping it operational. We had a little bit of challenge over the winter with the Lieu freezing, and we learned a lot about heaters and pumps, and so we'll be able to take that knowledge with us forward and be able to keep not only the existing Lieu but any future Lieus operational once the temperatures dip considerably low. But I think, everything else, all things considered, the Lieu has stood up pretty well against the use it's had, and again, the ambassador team, I can't say it enough, has done an excellent job at keeping the facility clean and well managed.
Great. Any other questions for Melvin?
Melvin, this is Jim.
Member Talon.
If I could
Hi,
just
Jim.
follow up, is there someone that could give us an approximation of what the cost of the first Lieu was? The Lieu perhaps, and then installation on top of that?
Sure. The first Lieu, I think, ran about $150,000, and that was, we customized it a little bit, had to add and take away some things. So I anticipate the cost being right around there. And I want to say the construction costs for the Weston site were around $250,000. There was a lot of work that had to go into that location to make it work. We had to move a storm drain, had to tie utilities from across the street over and close roads and things like that. And so I would estimate that cost would probably be around there again. Again, depending on what has to be done, we might find a site that works really well that we don't have to move a storm drain or, destroy and then rebuild a curb and all those things. So I think the cost could fluctuate. We certainly want to keep the work that has to go into a site in mind as we kind of move forward, which is why we're asking Moore and Bruchnik to help us look for locations in advance, not just kind of pointing to a map and saying, like, does this place work and let's put a Lieu there. So they're helping kind of helping us understand the utilities and what is happening in those locations can help us kind of remove locations from our list and maybe point us in a direction where the Lieu might land and be serviceable to the downtown community, but also be in a place where we don't have to kind of move heaven and earth to get a Lieu landed there.
That'll be an interesting balancing act. Thanks, that's helpful.
Yes.
Remember, Eddie?
We can follow up with specifics on the numbers for the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jamel, you have a comment?
I think you're muted, Jermail.
I think you're still muted.
Still muted. All right. I have heard great things about the Lieu. Often conversations with Nadia and Shaitan at GR Noir, and they continue to say that they're grateful that that's there. But I guess my question is, are there any goals going forward of how many of these we want to have, or what's the ultimate goal for restroom accessibility? Because then I'm wondering, is there a way, if we want to go with this particular style going forward, is there ways, or are we looking at future planning, like, okay, kind of like the tree canopy, like, okay, we've identified X amount of sites over X amount of years that we want to install one of these things, and then as the business person in me says at that point, or maybe even at this point, are there any price breaks with having more? But perhaps that's not the goal, to continue to install, so to speak, different Lieus around town as the city grows. But maybe it is. I'm not sure. I don't know if there's been that conversation or not.
That's a good question, and I think that's been part of my thinking, is looking at, like, as we start to really dig into where we want to put it. Obviously, the next Portland Lieu, it's where else might we want to land public restrooms, and I think it's even a broader conversation than how many Portland Lieus do we want to build. It's conversations that involve the Parks Department and, like, how are they rehabilitating their bathroom facilities in their parks. And maybe the answer, and likely the answer, is not we just keep building Portland Lieus. It's probably a more comprehensive strategy, a few more Lieus, but really looking at, like, how can we get existing public restroom facilities to kind of meet some needs that exist without having to build a whole new structure, right? If we know that a Noblin Park is going to go and receive some work, then maybe it's looking at that bathroom being available and open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And so we don't have to land a Portland Lieu over there because there's already a bathroom facility. So that's one of the things we're looking at. And I know that as we look at things like Bridge South reconstruction and development, like landing bathrooms in, that area is something that I think is important too. And so it's hard for me to tell you, like, 5 more Lieus, 10 more Lieus. I think it's sort of an evolving strategy depending on what other work is being done in the downtown. I do appreciate the idea of trying to get a price break. I don't know if they offer one. I certainly can ask. Maybe we buy a 6-pack, we get a 7th free or something. And but it's certainly something to look into. But to kind of go back to the original question, as we kind of go through these sites, my hope is to continue to build a short list of locations of, like, these are probably the 5 places we can land a next bathroom facility in and around downtown, and start looking at developing those sites.
All right, interesting reference to 6-pack when we're dealing with bathrooms, but Mayor Bliss.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm curious if we've looked at other options as well. So a lot of other cities, they have public restrooms in their parking structures on their main floor that people obviously can access from the sidewalk. And then there are some cities that have accessible bathrooms in public buildings, again, accessible from the sidewalk. So I'm just curious, have we looked, $250,000 is a lot of money, and I'm just curious if we've really done an exhaustive analysis of what are the other options, and are there spaces, in addition to the Parks Department, are there other spaces that potentially could be utilized?
Yeah, I know part of the work that the Hardside Restroom working to look at the feasibility of putting these structures into existing parking ramps. And the problem with that they kind of ran into a lot was same thing when we're digging into a street is there's not always utilities that are easily accessible in those structures that you would lend themselves to a bathroom. Like there certainly is probably space, right? There's probably dead space that can be converted. The problem is digging into that dead space and putting in things like drains and water facilities and electricity. So it does become pretty cost prohibitive as well as operationally prohibitive. You got to think if you're doing massive construction in a parking ramp to put a bathroom facility in somewhere, it affects the operation of that ramp too. And I agree that I think there are potentially other structures. I think one of the things that have been extremely successful for us with the Lieu is that its ability to take the usage that the high usage that it gets, and it has handled it pretty well. I mean, we've had some vandalism inside. They started a small fire, and the Lieu was relatively unscathed through all of that. I mean, we had like my beautiful picture that hangs in there was burned, but other than that, the Lieu itself was in really good condition. I've been to other communities that have sort of traditional brick and mortar bathrooms, and I've seen the damage that has been done to those facilities, like things like sinks getting ripped off walls and toilets being completely removed. And it may be cheaper on the outset to build something like that, but it would be interesting to track the maintenance of a facility like that over time and see how much cost we're putting into fixing something like that pretty consistently. But I agree, we can certainly look into other options too. I mean, we're not necessarily married to one strategy.
Yeah, I was going to say that's certainly something we can look at again, Mayor, with that Heartside Quality of Life group and the specific public restroom group. Our initial location was in a city parking ramp. As Melvin kind of ran down there, we ran into some obstacles, but I don't think those are necessarily going to be true everywhere. And if there's an opportunity to land a facility in an existing building, I think that it would be worth exploring, because it is, as you pointed out, it's a significant amount of money.
Member Shockey?
Melvin, just a quick question and request for clarification on the 15,300. I see it's to begin site engineering work. So how far does that get us? Like 2 construction documents, or is it just a site location? Will there be more engineering?
It's both. It's both consultation to find a location and engineering to get us to construction documents to land the Portland Lieu in that location.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Good questions. Anybody else?
Chair, I had one more question, and
Sure.
This is more so regarding the river restoration. There's going to be restrooms there, correct? Like along the river, maybe Lion Square or something. Because my question is, are those going to be, wherever they land, will those be 24 hours? Just trying to think about additional restrooms around the city.
Tim or?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if Melvin was jumping in there. I think the quick answer is to be determined. I think that would be part of the planning for river build out, and particularly in those opportunity spaces. I think our goal would be to have restrooms strategically located throughout the corridor so that they're accessible and available 24 hours a day. There's obviously some more work that needs to go into that.
Thank you.
Yep. But I think it just, maybe just to zoom out and to one of Melvin's points, I think our goal is to provide accessible restrooms throughout downtown. So river corridor and other key locations that are high activity, because obviously it's a need for everyone.
And as a follow-up to that, Tim, I guess another question is, when we look at the size of our downtown, what's the determination of the number of restrooms? Is it X amount of toilets, per block, per amount of visitors, per the general population? Is there even an equation for that?
That's a good question. I bet you there is. We would probably need to look at visitor concentration, as well as one of the things, for instance, with trash cans, one of the things we look at is distance between trash cans, right? If it's 200 feet, 300 feet, 600 feet between trash cans. Like the longer that distance is, the more likely you're going to have someone just throw trash on the ground. So probably something similar concept wise for a bathroom. Like the distance is probably greater than what it would be for a trash can, but we certainly want to avoid like bathroom deserts where there's like whole parts of downtown that are blocks and blocks and blocks away from like a public restroom at any given moment, right?
All right. I mean, I think the interesting thing to me is the ability to build is always one thing. The ability to maintain the asset is always another. So I think the key to being able to, I think, build more of these is, can we maintain them? So, and how do we maintain them, for the public use that's going to be acceptable to all of us, using those public restrooms. So I'm most interested in, how, as we build onto these, the number of units, what's our ability to maintain them. So at any rate, if there are no other comments, I would entertain a motion if someone would like to make one.
This is formal motion for approval.
This is
Thank you.
Diana. I support the.
Thanks, Diana. Any other comments or questions? Is there anyone on the board that would like to vote no or abstain from this motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Melvin.
Yeah, thank you all. Have a great day.
Next, I believe, is holiday decor.
Yes. Yeah. You're on.
Yes, you are right.
Excellent.
So
Okay,
it's,
Kim, you're up.
thank you, Rick. It's that time of the year again where we start talking about holiday and winter decor, which I can't believe it's only June.
It's too hot for that.
I'm a little premature, but last year we ran into some issues with COVID, of course, with production. And we had come to you for approval for expansion on a few different areas, which we received approval as well as a 3-year approval for a 3-year agreement with DeVries Landscape to help us out with the implementation, storage, and the installation of all of these lighting implementations. So we're looking to be able to now deploy all of the items that we were able to purchase last year, but we didn't get in time from production, as a lot of the contractors were shut down and we had issues with staffing and COVID and stuff. So we'll be able to implement that. And then also this year would be repurchasing expired lights that are at Rosa Parks Circle, and Goal 5 is looking to possibly even change up like the lighting scheme. We've had the blue and white lights downtown for quite a while. It's been, I think, like 6 years, if I'm correct. So we're looking to possibly change up the color scheme. So they're kind of diving into that here next week at the next meeting. And I have Bill Pringle with me today from DeVries Landscape if you have any additional questions. Other than that, I have a recommendation to approve the expenditure not to exceed $65,000 to Christmas Decor by DeVries for the installation, deinstallation, and storage of holiday decorations for FY22.
Which was a budgeted activity.
Correct. Sorry. Yes. Thank you, Tim.
Yep.
All right. Any questions for Kim?
I'll make the motion, Chair.
Thank you, Mary.
Support by Talon.
Thanks, Member Talon. Any other comments or questions? Is there anyone on the board that would like to vote no or abstain from this motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Kim.
Yes.
I think you're still up. Major
I-
event sponsorship.
I believe I am. I'm not going anywhere. So today we have 3 event proposals seeking support and funding from the DDA. That includes Art Prize, the Global Water Festival, and Confluence. Although we are pretty familiar with Art Prize and their commitment activating our downtown with public art, they have some new components and changes to this year's event they'd like to be able to share with you. And then both the Global Waterfest and Confluence are new emerging events this year. The Global Waterfest was an event that Goal 5, Goal 1, and DJI staff wanted to put on to highlight the Asian community's rich heritage and culture with water while highlighting our local Grand River. So we reached out to ACE from the Grand Rapids Asian Pacific Foundation to help us organize the event. And Confluence was created out of last year's Bridge GR event series and building upon that concept to include additional arts, music, tech talks, makers fair, and support of local businesses. So with that, I kind of want to pass the torch over to our 3 event organizers to go over their presentations, to talk a little bit about what each event is doing this year, and then take any questions that you may have, if that's okay with you. So.
Certainly.
Great. So first up, we have Brian from, Craig from Art Prize is going to kick it off. So, Brian, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
As Craig, the executive director here from Art Prize.
Great. And if you want to just tell Amanda next slide, that's totally fine.
Okay.
So you can take it away.
Great. The first couple slides here, we're just going to cruise right through because a lot of it is similar to Art Prizes that you've seen in the past. So we all know and love the Steam Pig in the Bob parking lot. So we can go to the next slide. Key tenants. Again, we're Art Prize 2021 is back this year. Excited to re-engage the community in the manner that many of us know and love. So hundreds of venues, lots of art and artists around the city. So we're excited to re-engage. Next slide. Just a quick highlights here. $200,000 in grants are given out to artists, and $250,000 is going to be awarded directly to artists, either through a juried grand prize or from the community. So next slide. Just some key dates, September 16th to October 3rd. The boundaries of Art Prize look very similar to what you've seen in 2018. Our deviation to Project 1 in 2019, we're going back to our roots. So it'll look and feel much like it has been in the past. Next slide. So areas of focus this year. Next slide. Big area of focus for us is going to be outdoor art. So this transition, because of COVID, felt it was very important to keep the city and the community safe. So we have a big focus on outdoor art, this urban art adventure, so to speak, navigating around downtown. Exciting to hear DGRI looking at a new website and this wayfinding application side of things. So that's also a very important aspect of Art Prize this year. Next slide. City installations, 17 venues are going to be activated with 4 satellite venues, Meyer Gardens, Center for Community Transportation, Garfield Park, and Campout Park. These are the city venues that will be activated. We're excited for the support from all aspects of the city, from Mobile GR to downtown, and hopefully we'll receive support from DGRI for this meeting. Next slide. This is the downtown district that we're looking at. Again, the boundaries look very, very similar. So we've got west, north, and south, all activations that you'll see around the area, with obviously a central hub in the heart of downtown. There will be a nice wayfinding aspect of this to help spread out the community and activating those the area parks and the outdoor exhibits. So we're excited to kind of spread the art around the boundaries of downtown to help keep everybody safe. Next slide. Thank you. So this whole aspect of the rising tide raises all ships. We're excited to share this Time Box event with many other organizations. So promoting this community and cultural events and taking place during Art Prize, the social zone aspect of things is going to be exciting for everybody to come downtown and experience not just Art Prize, but all these other incredible opportunities that these other organizations have so generously given their time towards during this the end of September. And go ahead and jump into the sponsorship. These are just the levels that we're at. The premier sponsorship is the DGRI side of things, so we're at that 50K level. Next slide. So what we're requesting for is the $50,000 cash support goes towards the curatorial grant financial support, the equity grant, underwriter, and public transportation and mobility partner. So with this generous support over the years, we've been instrumental into having a positive visitor experience, and it will go a long way for helping these artists from a curatorial, like I said, curatorial and equity grant side of things, and getting the best art possible in an outdoor experience. Next slide. So just a quick highlights, and we won't dive too deep into this one, but one of 6 sponsors for the curatorial underwriter. So there are this is a limited underwriting opportunity for DGRI. The digital recognition on our website, the artist e-newsletter that goes out in any of our social channels. I will tell you that DGRI does an incredible job on their Instagram. I'm on it all the time, and the photos and the highlights of the city. I've been very impressed. So kudos to you on that one. Logo placement and signage at each of the granted projects. So there will be recognition at each of the granted projects for the curatorial side of things, and customization opportunities that become available. The equity grants side of things, one of 2 sponsors. Again, we won't get deep in the weeds. These range from $1,000 to $5,000 to the equity grant artists. Again, digital recognition on artprize.org and the e-newsletter that goes out for these equity grants. Logo placement at signage of each of these as well. So there will be more brand recognition to DGRI. The premier package, again, continuing the mobile transportation or mobility partner or public transportation. Excited to promote the Dash downtown. I've been a writer of Dash. I thoroughly appreciate that opportunity to get around downtown in a very effective manner. So that's been a near and dear to my heart. Promote the micromobility programs featuring electric scooters and bike sharing. So within our wayfinding app, we are plugging in those scooter and bike locations for the rideshare. So this will be part of our wayfinding. So we'll have fantastic exposure during Art Prize to where to get those scooters and bikes and how to rent them. That will also be a part of our experiencing Art Prize for new visitors. For our blog posts, we'll highlight those opportunities as well. DGRI message on installation signage, media and PR communications around the sponsorship, social media customization for maximum impact, and Art Prize website recognition by Alpha and Level. So again, we're recognizing DGRI on the website. And then giving the sponsor seal to you for you to use as you see fit. This partnership is always a positive one, so we're looking forward to showcasing both you and our other partners for activating the city, and then activation, permitting, and promotion. So these other sponsorship opportunities that become available. And again, so the theme this year is just this rising tide raises all ships, this hopes and excitement in Grand Rapids, building togetherness, art and lovers, bringing Art Prize back in its our original form, but creating this digital experience for art and artists to take advantage of what the city has to offer, and this openness and healing to re-engage this community pride. So downtown is an important aspect to Grand Rapids as a whole, not just downtown Grand Rapids. It revitalizes the city and just it creates this energy that we're excited to re-engage and bring the community together again.
Thank you, Greg.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, and just stay on if the board chair or board members have any questions. We're gonna roll into the next presentation quickly, and that's Ace with the Global Waterfest. Ace, are you on here?
Yes, I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, take it away, man.
So I really appreciate the opportunity to present today. Initially, the event is supposed to be just for the Asian community, but talking to several other community members and organizers, we felt like a global water event will be a much better fit for the city of Grand Rapids. So what is the Global Waterfest? I mean, this is a event designed to bring out the diverse communities of Grand Rapids to activate the Grand River. We want this to be a free and open event to the community, to highlight some of the ways that we could enjoy the Grand River. One of the things that we are going to be incorporating, if next slide, please, is a dragon boat race. So dragon boat race, we partner up with the South Haven Dragon Boat Association. Can we go over to the next slide, please? So we partner up with the Dragon Boat Association of South Haven, Michigan, and also some other national Dragon Boat associations. And we secured 2 of their dragon boats that they're going to be bringing here in downtown Grand Rapids. But this is an opportunity for organizations, even maybe Team DJI, to form a dragon boat team to just kind of enjoy the river. Now, upon discussing this events with other organizations, I think we may have a partnership brewing with the Grand Rapids Rowing Club Association as well. So we are going to be expanding this from more than just a dragon boat, and we're going to be bringing the rowing sprints. If we move on to the next slide, please. This is a way for team building, and we are getting a lot of interest right now just through word of mouth conversation that several teams from other states are interested in participating in our first ever dragon boat race here in downtown Grand Rapids. But this is a great opportunity for communities to form their own teams and, just to highlight and enjoy the Grand River. Some of the things that we're going to be highlighting is we talked to a flyboarding company so they could do some stunts in the river, and also give an opportunity for our community to experience and get some instructions on how to ride those exciting flyboarding machines. We also partner up with a paddleboard race company so they could teach people in our community how to do paddleboarding just across from the river. So basically from Monroe all the way to the Scribner side, and just for people just to highlight and enjoy that. The next piece is we want this to be more of a diverse event. We want to highlight the diverse communities in Grand Rapids, and just talking to several people, we already are getting a lot of interest before we even get started. So I can see this to be a really diverse event, highlighting the river and for people to really just enjoy the water that we have here, especially in downtown. Next slide is Beer City and Beyond. I mean, just looking at the breweries around the area that we're going to be hosting this event, we got several breweries right on the 6th Street Bridge and Canal Park. So the goal is to partner up with as many as businesses in and around that area to highlight and to really activate the use of the Grand River. As I mentioned, the event site is the Canal Street Park. This will serve as a way for, there's a lunch area at Canal Street Park, and we will be able to host our events in and around the 6th Street Bridge, and further along, we could maybe use the Leonard Street exit as a starting point for the Grand Rapids Rowing Club races. This will promote the use of the dash lots. Just talking to the South Haven community, they already are asking like where are parking, and I said, hey, we have plenty of parking downtown. We also have the use of the dash lots where it's a really low cost parking for you, and they're really excited to bring their families, their community here in downtown Grand Rapids. And Global Waterfest goals is just to promote the use of the Grand River, to showcase the downtown mobility, to enhance hotel stays and people to enjoy downtown Grand Rapids. This is an opportunity for us to not only showcase the Grand River, but also have a place for information, to use the websites that's being built by the DJRI, and just really showcase what we have in store in Grand Rapids. That's all I got.
Thanks so much, Ace. Stick around. I'm going to pass the torch over to Brian from Confluence to take over the next presentation.
Thanks, Kim, and thanks to the board for having us. We're excited to be here. I'm here with two of my colleagues, Derek Call and Becca Guyette, and we are very excited to present a brand new event to Grand Rapids called Confluence, which will be a 3-day multi-sensory event that will explore what's possible when art, music, science, and technology converge. And I wanted to spend just a second to go back to our origins. Confluence was born in October of last year. As you know, a lot of terrific event talent hit the street during that time. It was in the middle of the shutdown. And I thought this is a great opportunity. Let's take advantage of it. Let's bring some of this talent back together to create something new, exciting, and important for the city. So I reached out to Becca in her role as learning engagement and other events. I reached out to Derek as an operations person and his work within World of Winter. They said yes. And at that point, Confluence was born. And we've really made terrific progress going from ideation to developing our programmatic elements to the development side. The community has shown a lot of support, a lot of excitement for the idea, and we're now excited to present it to you. So this year's event will be September 23rd through 25th in Calder Plaza. And within our 4 pillars, art, music, and science, and tech, we're going to focus on innovation and how innovation in West Michigan is leading the way in so many different ways in the medical space, in the design space, and bring some of that terrific work that's happening sometimes behind closed doors, bring it to the street, expose the public to it, let them get excited and proud, and experience the terrific things that are happening right here in our own backyard. Our partnership objectives for DGRI is, I'm sorry, if you would maybe go back one. Right, is to create a partnership that reinforces you as a leader in innovation and creativity, that reinforces DGRI as an advocate for the arts, inclusion, and equality, equity, and to deepen awareness for your mission to activate public environments and drive activity to downtown spaces. We have a terrific partner in WMCAT. They're acting as our fiscal sponsor. As a new event, it's important that people trust us. They trust our transparency. They trust that the investment they make in the event is going where we say it's going to go. So WMCAT will provide that transparency, that umbrella over our fiscal activity, and make sure that everything is as it should. That's important as we ask the city to trust us, as we ask the public to trust us and others. Okay, if you would advance. So as I said, we've defined 4 pillars within which we're going to explore innovation, art, music, science, and tech. And we're going to have major programmatic elements that reach into all of those areas. We're going to have a music showcase that presents bands who have one foot in music, but one foot in one of these other pillars. So musicians who are using technology in interesting ways in the production of their sound, or using art in interesting ways in the production of their stage show. We are producing an innovation showcase, which will shine a spotlight on high-tech entrepreneurs within Western Michigan, Grand Rapids specifically, and even more specifically, communities that have been historically underrepresented within high tech. So communities of color, et cetera, will be the focus of the Innovation Showcase and bringing them to the forefront and giving them an audience within the public. We're producing a terrific thought series, which will be leaders within the medtech space, insurtech, agtech, all of the important issues that are happening now and that innovation is addressing. We're going to bring those people to town, put them in front of the public to talk about where we're going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, with energy, transportation, education, DEI, et cetera. We also have a terrific Maker Expo that's being produced to focus on our DIY community and the terrific work that's happening in garages and basements around the region. A lot of terrific innovation comes out of that space. And then a future innovator zone, which will be our family-friendly kid area, which we're billing as a STEAM-based wonderland. And that's going to be full of robotics and drones and electric vehicles and a lot of activity to get kids excited about STEAM, to get them excited about opportunities for employment within those areas, and again, to show them the great work that's happening right here in Grand Rapids. Those are the big programmatic elements. Art, of course, is something that we wanted to include. We are in Grand Rapids. Public art is crucial to this town, and we wanted to make it part of our event as well. But we didn't want to step on any of the other events that have public art as their mission as well. So what we are focusing on is transforming our space, Calder Plaza this year, into a 360-degree multi-sensory experience. So as people come and they are participating in the music or the Maker Expo or the Future Innovator Zone, they will be surrounded by technology that envelops them. So this can include motion graphics, digital projection, 3D animation, audio technologies that again create an experience that is unique and specific to Confluence, but feeds into all of our programmatic elements. And this is the piece that we're asking support of DGRI to underwrite, and that we think will really separate us and create differentiation from all the other great events that are happening around the same time. So as I said, we are in Calder Plaza this year. We wanted to have the event all happen in one space so that we have the opportunity to mix audiences. So there are audiences for the music that would come out, but who wouldn't necessarily come out to see a Maker Expo. But getting them all in the same space gives us an opportunity to create Venn diagrams, if you will, with audiences. So we have an opportunity to take people on a voyage of discovery so that they'll be exposed to areas that they wouldn't necessarily seek out ordinarily. So you can see within the plaza, we're really taking over the whole space with our music focused around the Calder itself, the Future Innovator Zone up in the corner, the Innovation Showcase across from the county building, Maker Expo a little bit down below. And then we're looking at the thought series happening in the Chamber of Commerce. So the one piece that's located off the square, but still certainly relatable and easy to access, and still makes it feel like a singular unit. And then we'll have a bar, of course, food trucks, all the other amenities that accompany a festival and make it a party. And I think that's important. Some of these programmatic elements may seem weighty, and they'll have some depth to them and some importance to it, but we also want the event to be fun. We want it to be exciting. We want your senses to be bombarded with all of this terrific stuff, all happening at the same time. So that's the vibe that we're going for. The sponsorship proposal that we are asking of DGRI is $20,000, again, to underwrite our art piece. And that will include the pieces that surround Calder Plaza, and then all of the other messaging and sponsorship benefits that follow that.
Excellent.
And I can get into a little bit more of that, Kim, if you...
No, it's okay. So with that, there is a recommendation before you all today to approve major event sponsorship to Art Prize in the amount of $50,000. Approve major event sponsorship to the Global Water Festival in the amount of $35,000, and an approval of major event sponsorship to Confluence in the amount of $20,000. All three are budgeted line items through the FY22 fiscal year. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure all three of our event organizers are happy to answer any questions you might have as well.
Any questions at all? These all look like three exciting major events.
Chairman, this is Jen. I have a question, and this might actually be for Tim. I'm just thinking back to the website redesign, and I'm wondering if that will be done when we have all of these, the sponsor links and logos.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll be quite done by that point, but to the extent we're able to promote and market and use our website and communication tools, we certainly would be doing that.
Sure, great, thank you. And then can you remind me the water festival dates? I missed those. I have an aunt who's a dragon boater, and I was already texting her. She's very excited. There's actually a whole network of breast cancer survivors who do dragon boat racing. So it's a pretty powerful experience to see them together.
Wow.
Exciting. It's September 25th of this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
This is Rosalind. I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mayor.
This is Jen. I'll support.
Thanks, Jen. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, is there anybody on the board that would like to vote no or abstain from this motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you all. Look forward to it. It's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Now we're back to my favorite subject, Lion Square.
And Mr. Miller is on the line with us to walk us through.
All right. Hi, Mark.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. So I'll try to make this as quick as possible. As you all know, we are in the midst of working through the Lion Square project, which was approved or authorized back in October of 2020. Progressive AE is the primary consultant on that project, and we've been working with them since then to get the project to a point of completion so that we can begin construction on it. There's been a few complications, not major complications, but things that we needed to address during the process. The first one was that as we started to dig into the project a little bit more during the design phases, we ended up realizing that there was some existing water main underneath the street that was what is referred to as antiquated. So it's 50 years or older. And so I think that there was some concerns from the various city departments regarding building new infrastructure over some of that water main, in particular snow melt. In the event that that water main fails and we have to pull it up and rebuild it. So I think that our goal during this phase was to get the design of that water main included in the project so that we could build new water main and hopefully remove some of those potential problems down the road as the project ages. So obviously that was not in the original scope of services for our consultant, so that there is some additional design services that are required for that water main design. And then additionally, and I think this is probably the larger one in terms of scope, timing at least, is that initially we were anticipating using some existing Eagle permitting for the project, but as the project sort of got to a point of the permitting process, we ended up really realizing that we needed to submit an entirely new Eagle permit for the project. And as a result of that, there's quite a bit of work that's required for that, that submission. So we engaged Progressive to get us a scope regarding that. Because obviously that is something that has to be done in order to implement the project. To date, going back a little bit, we had included a $27,000 contingency in the original allocation for the project. So we were able to use that
to continue the work so that there was not a gap in the process of doing both of these extra services. But we have gotten to the point where we are now realizing that there's some additional work in addition to that 27,000 that we want to be able to cover as we try to finish the project up. So we've worked with our consultant team to give us a number that should cover those two items. And that's what we're requesting today as far as the not to exceed amount of $30,000. And that's really for the two items that I talked about, the additional water main design and the Eagle permit work that will bring us to hopefully a conclusion to the project with the anticipation of starting construction, I believe, next spring. So I'm happy to take any questions regarding that.
Anyone have any questions? I, for one, am happy that we are in the permitting stage of this project. That's a major milestone, I would say. And the fact that we're actually looking underground at this point, that's, I think, a positive sign as well. So, Mayor?
Thanks, Chair. Mark, do we have any idea on timeline for the Eagle permit? Are we pretty confident that's going to move swiftly?
I think that there's actually quite a bit of non-clarity on that permit, just because of the amount of permits and the time frame that's given from the state regarding those. I think that we are, as a group, optimistic that we can have something in hand that allows us to do the construction in the spring of next year. And I think that that's one of the topics of discussion as we continue to move through the project. I think there was a point where we thought maybe we could start in the late fall, but I think because of the uncertainty of the permit and also starting a construction project in the fall in Michigan is not necessarily the best scenario practically. And then just a note that we are, I think in a couple of weeks, having a meeting with the team to get an update on where that permit is and where they sort of see it in the process.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. Can you keep us updated on that? I know
Yes.
Being a part of the river restoration work, some of the permitting issues with Eagle and MDNR are a bit challenging. So
Yes. I think that we're seeing that across multiple fronts on various projects where it's just a lot of it has to do with the timing of the permits submitted and then how long they have to respond and how much they can extend that process. And so a lot of it is outside of the people submitting the permits, and it's resides in Lansing.
yes. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I would need a motion to approve this.
I'll make the motion, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have a second?
Support.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Luis, second.
Luis, thank you, Luis. Any other questions or comments? If not, is there anyone on the board that would like to vote no or abstain from this motion? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Next is the Grand Rapids Public Museum River Edge Design. Andy, I think Andy's going to take us through this.
I think you're on. Sorry, Andy, I think you're on mute.
I think we'd have that figured out by now. Good morning, everybody. We've made it to page 103 in your packet. So thanks for hanging with us. In the interest of time, I'm just going to offer a few words of context and then throw it over to Dale Robertson, who is a tremendous champion for the Grand Rapids Public Museum, its vision for the future, and of course, the Grand River Revitalization Project as a whole. So Just a little bit of context. You all will recall we did a little plan called GR Forward, and the first goal of that was to reestablish the Grand River as the draw and build out a riverfront park system. Within that, we identified more than 24 what we call opportunity sites along the river where we have opportunities to increase public access to the waterway, add new amenities, build out a trail system, and generally connect the river corridor in a green ribbon, basically from Riverside Park to Millennium Park over about 9.5 or so miles. Within that plan, the Grand Rapids Public Museum site was identified as a priority site. It was ranked among, I think, maybe 10 or so priority sites at the time, where we have an opportunity to do all of those community goals. And I think importantly, and Dale will talk about this in a minute, the museum site also provides some special opportunities, particularly as it relates to culture and education with their partnership with Grand Rapids Public Schools and other things that they do in that facility. So the museum has been doing quite a bit of planning over the last year or two, and we invited Dale here to give us an update on that process, and I'll throw it over to him. And then when he's done, we'll also have a request to help support some additional design work to get the River Edge project basically shovel ready throughout this year. So that's the context, and Dale, I'll throw it over to you.
All right, thank you, Andy. Thank you, members of the board. It's Dale Robertson at the Grand Rapids Public Museum. I very much appreciate having some time this morning. Yes, we're here to be part of the formal request for some support that would allow us then to truly be shovel ready to complete some engineering and schematic designs. I'd like to first compliment our owners, the City of Grand Rapids. Although we're no longer a city department and have separate management, we're still part of the family. We're still owned by the city, and so we cooperate and work with them. And the city has been very gracious in agreeing to hold all the paper and to really lead and be in charge of the entire construction bid process and evaluation all the way through. And so the rendering you're seeing here, which is boy, we just got done talking about art, and this is a beautiful piece of art in my estimation, because this is the 2B of what the Grand Rapids Public Museum would be if the entire expansion plan were to go through. It was created by the architect that won that bid through the city, which is Tower Pinkster, and it has trail systems and access to the river, and will allow a particular access to a wave feature that's going to be right in front of the Grand Rapids Public Museum. So an overall goal, being that we are a public entity, is that we be as public, if not more public than we've ever been, and it truly be a community gathering place where people can stay and come and enjoy, whether we're open or not. And so what I'd like to do is allow my colleague, Dr. Stephanie Ogren, to go through just a quick, I know you've had a lot of presentations today, but a quick presentation on the river edge, the riverfront design. There's other components too to this major expansion, but this is the one that is directly related to most directly related to the rapids. The return of the rapids, and are part of our GR Forward Master Plan. The other thing that I think, if you allow me just a minute to brag, you know I'm not from here, so I don't have any of the West Michigan humility, is that the other part of the driving the expansion for the public museum is simply just use. When I took this job in 2008, we had 68,000 visitors. 2019, before COVID, we had 259,000 visitors. We have 30,000 school visits, student visits, but that was capped because we're just out of room. And this expansion will ideally allow us to double that to 60,000. So the river edge is a really important piece because it's a key to how we do our science and education and watershed and water ecology programming, and that's Stephanie Ogren's wheelhouse. So with that, Dr. Ogren, I believe you're on here somewhere, and take it away.
Thanks, Dale. Andy, can we, next slide, can we go through these?
Perfect, thank you. And I will try to just run through these quickly, but I do want to show you some of the conceptual drawings that Tower Pinkster has come up with. And just to put this in context, we are working through the museum's strategic plan. So we're looking at the redesign and community engagement. So really how the museum can be that hub of community engagement on the west side that focuses on science, history, and culture. Next slide. As Dale mentioned, pre-COVID, we had almost 260,000 visitors. 30,000 of those were students. We did learn a lot through COVID, but we've been working on this design throughout COVID and really thinking about our digital infrastructure, but also how we use our space. And so how we can make the museum accessible from the outdoors, and that riverfront design really allows us to expand our reach and become that community asset. Next slide. So we are, or were, and are part of the GR Forward Master Plan. We are also part of the River for All planning process. So as we worked with Tower Pinkster and our design team, as well as with the community, we really took all of those suggestions and recommendations into account and tried to create a design that really highlights all of the best pieces of those plans right at the museum site. Next slide. This is part of a larger design process. So this is a layout of the museum. And just for context, the river would be at the bottom of the screen. The round portion's the carousel. To the left is our south. That would be an addition that we would propose. On the west side of the building, we would have a new group entrance. And then on the north side, we're reconfiguring our retail and access. All of those really have been driven by this bigger idea for riverfront access. So though we're looking at riverfront access today, it is part of a much larger and comprehensive redesign of the museum and the museum experience. So that really becomes a place of learning in the 21st century. Next slide. So if we think about the riverfront specifically, when we talked with the designers and the community, we really wanted to think about creating a space that could host all of the programs that the community is asking us to host right now. Oftentimes, next slide please, we end up doing many of our riverfront programmings on our neighbors' properties. So we're often at an Audubon Park or at Grand Valley or across the river. You'll see that's some of our summer science students. And we actually access the river from across the Blue Bridge, so you can see the museum in the background, because we just don't have an accessible site. Next slide. So this is what we look like today. Many of you are familiar with that. And then as Dale showed, the next slide really shows the vision for the future. So we have fully accessible trails. All of these were designed with universal design principles in mind. They are of low grade, so they are fully accessible for all mobility types. And you'll see that they connect really nicely with the Audubon Park to the north, as well as Grand Valley State University to the south, and really help complete that loop for that trail system. Next slide. So if we start at Pearl and Front Street, the redesign really takes into account creating a West Side campus. So it has that look and feel of a Audubon Park and the Ford Museum, and connects really well with our neighbors. If we start to walk around the building, next slide, please. You'll notice there's some terracing. So this would be the tunnel from an Audubon Park over to the museum campus. And we start to have these terraces where people can gather adjacent to that wave feature that is planned to be on the north side of our property. And then we have these fully universally designed trails that go up towards the museum or down towards the river for accessibility, no matter the height and the flow of the river. Next slide. These terraces would allow for community gathering. Right now, you know, the conceptual images show rocks, but I always like to say this really would become an artifact garden. So we could have dugout canoes or historical replicas of furniture from Berkey and Gay, but ways that we can continue to tell the story of West Michigan just by having people be on our property. Next slide. As you walk towards the carousel or wheel towards the carousel, you would be on a ramp system that would allow you full access to that community asset. Next slide. And you'll notice a change in the carousel. So currently you have to go out and around the carousel, and there's a series of steps in the system. And so this would really truly conform to that River for All design and allow for this nice open pathway. It also allows for the carousel to be open to the public when the museum's not necessarily open. So it would have its own separate entrance. And the next slide. If you were looking back at the carousel, we also, because it is West Michigan, it's cold and rainy and snowy sometimes. So we've been thinking about snow melt as well as louvers for weather protection. But the fact that this would allow the carousel to be an accessible asset and be open to the public when the museum's not is really important. And in the next slide, you could show how we also will be redesigning the inside of the carousel as a separate part of the project so that it is an accessible asset where everything is a ramped system. Next slide. On the south side of the carousel, we've created some nice seating areas that overlook the Blue Bridge. These would be great for educational programming and community programming. It's a lot quieter on this side. It's blocked from the highway noise. And so we could see this area being utilized quite a bit for school groups. Next slide. And then this would continue this trail system that would connect with Grand Valley and allow that ramped access up and down the river corridor. And then once we move forward with our South Tower expansion, it would also connect with a ground floor cafe that the museum is planning. And so we're really excited about the opportunities for this. This is the plan view of how the Riverfront redesign ties in with all of the other projects. And then I would just leave you with the final slide, which is my favorite view, looking from the river up towards the museum and showing those accessible walkways and trail systems that this portion of the design would cover. Dale?
So that's it. Well, happy to answer any questions and very much appreciate your consideration of some matching dollars to support so we can also be shovel ready, and maybe we can also be, if we can raise some of the additional dollars, we could join the Lion Square folks and both be working at the same time. And maybe that spurs the rest of the permitting for the other parts of the river restoration.
All right, nice presentation. Any questions?
Monitoring the chat there, it looks like you did get a red-winged blackbird question.
We were just talking about that yesterday. I think that should be a design challenge for the museum school students to figure out how to ecologically make that situation go away.
Mr. Chair, maybe just to detail the specific request here. The request is to support the museum with an amount not to exceed $253,625, which would be combined with some other funds to advance the river edge concepts into final designs and construction documents, and as Dale mentioned, get the project shovel ready. We had the Goal One group out on the site the other day, and one thing we talked about was a comment that actually Daniel Tillelian left us with when he was here from River LA, and he kind of expressed the importance of setting the tone with early projects. And as we think about the museum site being one of the first major opportunities sites to move forward, this is a really exciting vision that I think does get at that idea of setting the tone for the level of access, the trail connectivity, and the other community goals that we're after at the river's edge. So a good project to lead forward here, and comes with a strong staff recommendation.
And Andy, if I could make a comment, if you wouldn't mind, I appreciate very much being part of all those sessions that DGRI and the DDA organize, and I found Daniel to be particularly inspiring and frankly influential in this. He challenged us to be bold and set a tone, and those words rang through this entire time that we were going through this. So thanks to DGRI for bringing him to town. He shared examples of what they've done out west, and I hope maybe you can see a little bit of that inspiration that he brought to this process through you in this entire design.
So Andy, just a quick question, or Dale, when you say shovel ready, what's your timing on actually shovel in the ground?
So the timing really rests on two things. One is raising the additional dollars that we would need for this. So this portion of the project for the river's edge here is about 7 million. We were part of a earmark request that went in through the city. We were one shy with Congressman Meyer, but we're not giving up, and we'll continue to pursue that and hoping for additional bites of the apple and other sorts. So if we can raise 7 million and then get the permits, and the permits, as I understand, that we should need will be very similar to what was needed for Annabawan Park. As soon as we can get that done, then with these engineering and schematics that you would be approving ideally for today, we would be ready to go at that point. So it's those two things.
Member Eddie, do you have a comment? I think you're on mute still.
There we go. I was just wanted to just say that I love the concept. I love the ideas here. This museum has been a tremendous blessing for my family and I during COVID, as a place that we were able to go, even with the mask. We were able to go there as a family, as well as take advantage of the membership benefit of going to other museums, such as COSI in Columbus, Ohio. And so many people around the city know that I've been kind of quietly pushing for, more science and industry type of museum here. And I know we have a lot of those components right here in this building and in this project. And so again, I just wanted to share that and say thank you for all that this museum has been for years for members of the community, as well as those who come to visit our wonderful city.
Thanks, Jerome.
Yeah.
Any other comments? It's an exciting project. Now it can be a contest of who goes first, Lions Square or the museum. So I'm raising the flag.
I love it. We can see each other right across the river.
Exactly.
If I could, Mr. Chair, if I could respond to Rail, it's, thank you for your comments on this. And, let me violate West Michigan rules and brag on Stephanie. She is an aquatic biologist and an ecological restorationist by training, has her PhD. So I guarantee you, we are just getting started again on the science. In fact, we've now got a geologist on our staff too. So all the minerals and all of the science specimens that were highlighted in the old building are going to be coming back out and shared more and more and more. So we're really just ginning up to where we used to be, and we'll surpass where we were on science. But to bake in the humanities and culture, right? Because all of that informs how we interpret and make sense of the scientific work. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. We're just getting going here.
Thank you. All right. If there are no other comments, I would need to entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McNeely.
This is Kate. I second that motion.
Thank you, Cam. Any other comments? If there are none, is there anyone on the board that would like to vote no or abstain from this motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Exciting project. Look forward to it. Speaking of the river, we have Grand Rapids Whitewater update is next, and I think we've invited Steve Heacock to give us a update of where we are. Steve, are you on?
I sure am. Yep. Thank you, Chairman Wynn, or is it Dragon Boat Captain Wynn? Maybe. But delighted to be here, and actually it was great to hear the other presentations, most of which, of course, are about the river in some way or another, and maybe that's the emphasis we need for this last presentation. We are going to trim this down. I promise. We'll get done in the time allotted because most of you are well acquainted with this project. What I want to get done today is two things. One, to make certain it's still top of mind for you, and secondly, give you an update on where we are and what's going on with the project. And I think I can do that rather quickly. To set the stage, though, and first of all, Amanda, thanks for your help last night and this morning. Could you go to the next slide, please, and the next one. Next slide, please. So just to set the stage, next slide, please. Again, I'm going to fly through these, Amanda. So just imagine, close your eyes for a second. Imagine standing next to an active stream that has rapids in it and feel that mist and hear the sound that's coming from the river and how that makes you feel. It's like the feel when you walk through a stand of pines or when you reach a vista on a mountainside or when you're on the top of a ski hill. It is a phenomenal feeling that's enriching and renews us as human beings, and I think brings us back to the core, our connection to nature, that meaningful tie that we have to the earth that binds us, and that really is what we're getting done here. There was a time when people found Grand Rapids by sound. They were a mile away in the woods. They started hearing the rapids, and they would find their way to the center of the village by that sound. And we mean to recapture that sound and that feel. Brian said earlier that public art's crucial to this town. This, in a sense, as Dale was saying, this is all art in a sense. I mean, because it brings in, it accentuates, it hones in your senses and your feelings and your basic nature, I think. And so that's at its core what we're trying to get done here. Yeah, let's go to the next slide, Amanda. Next slide, please. The project goals. You can see them there. I'm not going to read them to you, but I do want to describe this in a little different way. Next slide, please. Next slide. We've been struggling with Eagle a little bit, and I'll talk about that. And in part, it's in how you describe the project and what it is we're doing. It's really not that hard, even though it is tremendously hard in its own right and very complicated and complex. I've kiddingly said that with the CAA, we had to move 2 courtrooms, we had to move a police station, we had to take down a relatively new parking structure and build a new convention center, and that all seems simple compared to this, in part because we're taking a natural amenity and making changes to it. So it makes everybody nervous, in part because the agency we're working with is, relatively fresh off of the Flint crisis and other things that have made them a little timid about innovative projects. So, but in effect, what we're doing is removing those 4 low-head dams that were put in there in the 1920s. And they are dangerous. They create whitewater that creates an unmanageable churn, meaning that if you went over it in a canoe or a kayak and turned sideways, which is what you would inevitably do, you cannot get out of it, no matter how strong you are as a kayaker. And it's why most of us are not in the river. And in fact, you don't see a lot of people in the river. And every now and then you'll see some brave or silly soul go through, but it really is not a place you can be safely. They're also impassable for non-jumping fish at most flows that we have during the summertime, and which means, of course, that the things like walleye and bass and suckers and sturgeon cannot get to natural spawning grounds, cannot get where they normally would get to create a good fishery. The second thing we're doing is repairing the bed of the river. So it's been stripped. It was purposefully stripped. There were state laws that said, let's go spend money on getting the rocks out of the river, because the attempt at that time was to create a better port. Everything then was about making Grand Rapids a better commercial port. So all that rock and gravel was stripped. It's now basically like, it is not this, but it's basically like a concrete chute that you might see for a sewer system. And it's not good fish and mussel habitat. Next slide, please, Amanda. So what are we doing? We're replacing those dams with 4 natural rock and gravel structures. 75% of it is riffle habitat, meaning it's just rock sticking out of the water and natural structure that exists. And then about a quarter of it is going to be the whitewater amenity that we're talking about. Very small part of the project are those recreational features, even though they're incredibly important, obviously, for the economic development and the recreational use. Those rock structures that we are going to build include a wave that'll be up to 2 feet high, that range in width from 35 to 140 feet, depending on flow. Keep in mind the river's 400 to 500 feet wide. So those waves, why are they important? What do they mean? They have suitable hydraulics for experienced boaters. They avoid these keeper hydraulics, that churn that we talked about, that the low-head dams do. In fact, they spit you out into a slow and deep recovery pool right downstream. So if you do what I will inevitably do and flip over, you're in this quiet pool then where you can gather yourself. There's also river egress on the shore, and Dale's project will provide an important one of those where people can get out if in fact they need to do so. And those waves will be passable by strong swimming fish species. So not only can fish get past on the riffle part, but they can also get through these waves. So again, remember, it's replacing a river-wide band of concrete that's over 1.5 feet high. And the design of them is very important. Eagle is challenging us on, why are you building these? And they use the term artificial structures. And we're going, yeah, well, we want them engineered because it makes them safer. If you just threw rocks in the river and allowed whitewater to occur where it might, you might end up in deep water, you might end up next to a flood wall, you might end up under the bridges. By designing them, we make the choices on where they go and how it happens. So that's the point I wanted to make, and I think we can flip forward, Amanda, to about slide 15. Yeah, go another one, Amanda. And then Matt Chapman is with me as well. And he's going to speak to the design and some of the other pieces of the project. But I did include these experts from Al Vanderberg, our friend in Ottawa County, the administrator there, just to make the point that, by the way, this project doesn't just benefit downtown. It benefits downtown greatly. But the truth is, as Al notes, fish, mussels, insects, they don't recognize county lines. So the ecological improvements we make are gonna benefit everything downstream, all through Kent County and then into Ottawa County, all the way to Lake Michigan. So all of those benefits are there, not just environmentally, but economically. The truth is, people are going to put in boats up near Ann Street to start this run. Many people will want to get out and go have a beer and go see a restaurant. Many people will want to stay in the river and float a quiet part of the river, a more wild part of the river that's not in the city. And they will take out somewhere along the way, or maybe go all the way to Grand Haven. So this assistance will be great, not only for the city, but for the region. Next slide, please. Matt, do you want to take over here? Matt Chapman is my partner in this effort and is also on the phone, I believe.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. I'll try to go quick. I know we're coming up on 10 o'clock here. So just wanted to kind of quickly highlight how this whole project will be implemented and just kind of touch base on exactly where we're at right now in the process. So Steve mentioned this is really kind of will be constructed as 2 separate projects that'll be permitted separately. The lower reach is roughly from Bridge Street down to Fulton Street. And that's the area that we're actively working through the permitting process right now. The upper reach is essentially then from Bridge Street roughly up to Ann Street, and that's being led by the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. They've contracted with the Army Corps of Engineers, and the city and Whitewater are intimately involved in that process as well. Next slide, please. So the lower stretch design, this is, as Steve kind of discussed, we will replace those 4 low head dams that are between Bridge Street and Fulton Street and replace those with rock and boulder structure to create these riffle and wave features. Next slide, please. There's an image on the lower left there as an example of a wave feature, what one of these might look like in our river system here. This was a wave in Carbondale, Colorado, on the Colorado River. That was very similar to the Grand River at one point, very kind of wide and just kind of flat and pooled up. And you'll see now that much more diversity in the flow. This is a wave that is engineered, that's been designed, that is now attracting visitors from all over the country for things like whitewater paddling, surfing, rafting. Kids when we were there jumped in and floated through in a little rubber ducky. Up on the upper part of the screen there, you see an example of what these riffle features would look like. So you get a sense of that restoring some of that whitewater that is not currently in the river. Next slide. As we go downstream, you'll see some of these wave features kind of progress. I'll pause here just briefly to kind of build on Dale and Stephanie's presentation. The museum's been an incredible partner in this vision, and we did work very closely with them on their redevelopment of that river edge. We wanted to be very careful about getting kids close to the river. So the way that this wave feature is oriented, the way their steps, where they came down, that was all very closely coordinated. We also did propose a little vein structure in the river on the south side of the property that will kind of divert the flow out into the center of the channel and provide kind of a small area, pooled area where those students can get down and touch the river. Next slide. Again, as you head down to Fulton Street, we'll have another wave feature and then some kind of random rock and boulder garden that'll serve a lot of habitat benefits for fish and wildlife and kind of replicate some of the historic boulder rapid conditions. Next slide. As Steve said, and as we've heard with other projects today, that the permitting is the challenge for these large complex projects. And I would kind of echo what's been said earlier, that we are very excited to be kind of out of that design phase and also into the permitting phase. The last 10 years has led us to working through significant design challenges. Obviously, the project that we have flowing through the city, we cannot do anything that creates a flood control problem. We have an invasive sea lamprey problem. We have a federally endangered mussel, fish passage, and then obviously just the way that the model is developed to predict flood conditions, that sort of thing. Very complex, and a lot of the years that have gone into it have gotten us to this point. So now we are working through the actual regulatory permitting process, and as Steve has mentioned, we've had 7 different state and federal agencies that we're working with. They have been at the table for many years, and we've had a lot of conversations with them. And now that we're into the formal processes, there's a bit more back and forth that's taking place, and we're excited to hopefully be starting construction in the river next summer, and I'll touch on that a little bit more in a second. Next slide. So the lower reach permitting milestone, as I said, this is what we're actively permitting. In June of last year, we filed the biological assessment with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That's the document that outlines our conservation measures for the federally endangered and state listed mussel species. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service issued their biological opinion in October of last year that essentially agreed with our conservation efforts that we proposed. We proposed a mitigation fund of about $1.8 million that we will pay into to relocate mussels, as well as to pay to mitigate mussels that cannot be relocated. The Watershed Project Plan is another federal document that we're working with that goes to the Natural Resources Conservation Service. That's a document that is required to analyze the environmental impacts of the project in order to release $4.1 million of federal funding from the NRCS. So we've received comments back on that document, and that will be resubmitted back to NRCS here shortly. And as Steve mentioned, and I think he's going to jump back in here and kind of discuss a little bit, but in October, we filed the joint permit application to Eagle, and this was our application for the state permit package, or state permits that we need. We received a letter, correction request letter in November from Eagle requesting additional information. We responded back to that, I think, the end of December, and then in early February, we received a second request letter back that identified some additional information, additional resources that we needed to provide. So our project team is, again, actively working on that. We will hopefully anticipate submitting the next response back to that package here shortly, and then that will kind of, again, put the package back in Eagle's court, and we will continue to work with Eagle as they process the application, hoping to work alongside of them to maybe help increase the efficiency and speed up some of the statutory timeframes that they mentioned or that they have for their permitting processes. Steve, do you want to quickly summarize some of the key issues that we're working on this response?
Yep, let me do that. And by the way, one thing we've not been able to touch because of the constraints of time is that we are working on the equity issue with respect to the river project. Many of you will remember that the city identified this project as a good one to kind of reintroduce some equity notion into contracting, et cetera. And Sierra Atkins has been working with the project, and really the difference, I guess, is that she's been at the table from the beginning, and that issue has been significant all the way through the planning, even on the technical engineering and other things that have gone through. And I know you can and will get reports from her and the city on their work in that regard, but it is worth mentioning. I didn't want to slip that by. So Eagle issues. The second letter Matt referred to had a number of issues in it, things like muscle management, concern about the recreational features, the alternative analysis, or the cumulative impact. And it was frankly kind of a mess, this letter, and we couldn't figure out why, and then finally figured out that they had considered the wrong purpose and alternatives analysis. They considered the one from the grant that Matt mentioned that we're getting from the federal government to improve fish habitat, and not the project overall purpose and alternatives analysis. They said it wasn't a mistake, but that they thought they should be the same, that they shouldn't be inconsistent. But that caused a lot of struggle because the purpose for that grant is solely to do fish habitat. You cannot use that grant for recreation. And so, of course, we adhered to that grant requirement. The overall project, a big part of the project is recreation and creating those whitewater waves. So we're trying to respond to that. And the way that we're going to solve this and get through it, I think, is one of the regulators said to us, we can't require you to present this to us on a silver platter, but if you do, it sure helps. And we are taking great care with this submission to make certain that we've outlined every piece of the law that's applicable, and then shown them exactly where we meet that law. And also, we're very much, working through to make certain that there's nothing that kind of can confuse them. We erred on the side of transparency the first time, and they got 2,000 pages of stuff, and it's our fault and not theirs that was hard for them to work through. It's going to be easier for them to work through this time. Secondly, we are having policy level meetings now. So it's not just the reviewer that's looking at this project, but the reviewer's boss's boss is now involved in meetings with Eric DeLong from the city, myself, and Tammy Newcomb from DNR. Join this Jared Sanders from Eagle, and we meet monthly to talk through these higher level issues and hopefully bring them to resolution. I'm very encouraged by that process and think we'll get there. Matt, why don't you finish up here?
And I think we can jump ahead one more slide, please. So just a real quick update on the Upper Reach project. As I mentioned, that's really being led by the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. They have contracted with the Army Corps of Engineers, who is conducting the environmental impact statement process for the Upper Reach project. That work has been temporarily paused as we are working on the permitting for the Lower Reach. So once the application is submitted and accepted by Eagle, we will see some additional activity going on for the upstream EIS process. So just a reminder, that started actually, we can go to the next slide, please. Started actually in 2019 with the public scoping. The Corps is reviewing 14 different alternatives for a new sea lamprey barrier to be built in the Grand River that replaces the function of the 6th Street Dam. The city and Grand Rapids Whitewater have discussed and proposed this adjustable hydraulic structure, and that is what we refer to as our kind of preferred choice. That structure would be located up above Leonard Street, between Leonard and Ann Street, near the city's water department storage yard. That is the alternative that we believe will provide the most flexibility, allow us to achieve a lot of these other benefits in terms of the river corridor benefits that have been outlined with trail park improvements. It just makes a lot more sense to put that structure upstream farther. The Fishery Commission will be the ultimate decision maker. They will review all the alternatives, and they will choose which alternative is built in the river. That is anticipated to probably happen sometime in 2023 is when that final document will be released. The construction of the new Lamprey Barrier, whatever is selected, will actually, this slide probably should have been updated, will actually be probably at least 2025 yet, kind of depending on how the process goes. Next slide. Just a quick summary of our funding, then we're just about done here. So again, this has been a tremendous example of how West Michigan comes together. There's a very strong mix of public and private dollars, and it's really a great opportunity to remove these aging and really, frankly, not necessarily dams anymore. Grand Rapids Whitewater has worked closely with the private sector and our local foundation community. We have commitments of over $16 million right now for the project. There's an additional roughly 15 million in state and federal government dollars that have been committed for the project. And then the memorandum of agreement that we mentioned earlier with the the Fishery Commission commits about $19.5 million for the construction of that new sea lamprey barrier with some additional funds to cover some of the sea lamprey control program costs. So in terms of the original estimated $45.5 million budget that we've been working actively to raise funding for the last 3 years, we have happy to report that we have 95% of that funds committed. Now that the world is kind of reemerging, we have start to see some more fundraising efforts take place. Just recently, we received about $2.5 million in new funding commitments again, and we're starting to do some walking tours and getting people back engaged with the river again. So the donor community still continues to be excited about this and about this concept and this idea of new recreation and all that can take place from the efforts to revitalize this entire river corridor. So lastly is just an estimated timeline, and of course the caveat here is obviously this depends on when the permits are processed and approved. We are hopeful that that will start to take place, and that if we get far enough along in the permitting process, we could do some mussel relocation work yet this year. That would have to take place in the fall. And then really we would actively be looking at construction, hopefully, the heavy equipment in the river on the lower reach starting in 2022. So as soon as we can get in the river next summer, that would last until about 2024. Once the lower reach is done, then the construction of the new sea lamprey barrier could begin. That will likely be about a year long, maybe a year and a half long process. And then again, we're advocating and hoping that once the barrier is built, that there's an opportunity to conduct or construct some additional in-river features very similar to what we proposed in the lower reach that'll provide some additional habitat and recreation. And then ultimately we hope to see the 6th Street Dam removed as well. So that would be roughly 2026 to 2027, again, depending on which alternative is selected. So I think that is our last slide. Happy to take any questions if we have any, and thanks for the time.
Thanks, Matt. Steve, are there any questions? We're excited for the progress.
I might mention, obviously, text or email me or Matt if you have further questions. I know time was tight, and I apologize for going over.
No, you're fine. Appreciate the presentation and the update. So any questions at all?
Looks like the mayor has her hand
Mayor.
raised.
Yes, I see.
Thanks.
Mayor?
Thanks, Chair. I don't have a question because I'm pretty intricately involved in this project, but I do want to say thanks to everyone involved. This is an extremely complex project with a lot of partners, both at the local level and the state level and the federal level. And the progress we've made, even though at times it feels like we take 2 steps back instead of 2 steps forward, the progress that we've made is pretty incredible. So I just want to thank everyone for their hard work.
Thanks, Mayor. All right, here, if there are no other comments or questions, I don't see any hands raised. Steve, Matt, thanks again. Appreciate the presentation. Next on the list is public comment. If there's anyone in the public that would like to make a comment to this board, now is the time. Just a reminder, we'd appreciate if you state your name, although it's not required, and you have 3 minutes to make your comments. Amanda, I don't see any, or Tim, do you see any?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't either.
All right, next then is board member discussion. Is there any board member that would like to make additional comments? I'm seeing none. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. This board meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. I will point out we do have our state required info meeting right after this. So if you want to stick around for some more presentations, please log in using the other link. Otherwise, we'll be in touch and see you soon.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone.